I came to see your triumph, but I'll leave you in ruins, she declared, her voice cutting through the glittering Beverly Hills hotel ballroom. Beneath chandeliers dripping with crystals, a nurse, a black woman, stood defiant where a smug groom planned her humiliation. 6 years ago, he cast her out, pregnant with twins, stripping her home, savings, and dignity. She endured sleepless nights, hospital night shifts, and cruel whispers of a world that mocked her struggle. His wedding invitation was a blade, meant to parade her pain before the elite. Yet in a sapphire gown, flanked by a billionaire and her twins, his spitting image, she turned his stage into her storm. Will her truth topple his empire? Stay to find out. Subscribe for our latest stories and share in the comments where you're watching from. Let's see how far this tale travels. The words still echoed in her mind, sharp as a blade. I came to see your triumph, but I'll leave you in ruins. She'd said them, bold and unyielding, under the glittering chandeliers of the Beverly Hills Hotel. But now, as the roar of the ballroom faded behind the heavy golden doors, her heart pounded like a drum in her chest. Grace Johnson, a nurse who'd spent years stitching herself back together, stood frozen in the grand foyer, her twins' small hands gripping hers. The sapphire gown clung to her skin, its weight both armor and anchor. Had she really just walked into this lion's den? The air smelled of roses and money, thick with the clink of champagne glasses and the murmur of elite guests in tailored suits and shimmering dresses. She caught her reflection in a gilded mirror, her dark skin radiant against the sapphire fabric, her curls swept high, her eyes fierce but flickering with doubt. What am I doing here? The question clawed at her. She wasn't this woman, draped in elegance, escorted by a billionaire. She was the one who scrubbed hospital floors at 3 a.m., who counted pennies for formula, who whispered lullabies to drown out her own tears. 6 years ago, her world had crumbled. Her husband, that man, had tossed her out like yesterday's trash, pregnant with twins. His twins. He'd taken the house, the bank account, her dignity, leaving her with nothing but a suitcase and a belly full of hope and fear. She'd faced eviction notices, judgmental stares at the grocery store, and whispers from neighbors who called her a fool for loving him. A black girl from Compton, thinking she could keep a man like that? The words still stung, etched into her memory like graffiti on her soul. She'd worked night shifts at the hospital, her hands raw from cleaning, her back aching, her heart heavier with every bill. Yet every night she'd kissed her twins' foreheads, promising them a future she wasn't sure she could deliver. The invitation had arrived last week, its gold-trimmed envelope mocking her from the kitchen counter. Come see me with someone who deserves me. His handwriting, sharp and slanted, felt like a slap. She'd almost torn it up, her fingers trembling over the trash can. Why give him the satisfaction? But something deeper, anger, maybe pride, stopped her. He wanted her to slink in, broken, a spectacle for his glittering guests to pity. Let them laugh, he'd probably bragged, his smirk as vivid in her mind as the day he slammed the door on her. She'd paced her tiny apartment, the kids asleep, the hum of the fridge her only company. Could I face him? The thought made her stomach churn. She saw his face in every shadow, those cold eyes, that cruel laugh. But then Marcus Hale had appeared. She'd noticed him at the hospital, his quiet presence lingering in the halls during late-night visits to the children's ward. A tech billionaire, they said, who funded cancer research after losing his wife. He'd seen her typing reports, one twin dozing on her lap, the other clutching her scrubs. You're stronger than you know, he'd said, his voice low, his eyes carrying a pain that mirrored her own. When he offered to help, not with pity but with purpose, she'd hesitated. Why me? What's his angle? She'd searched his face for lies but found only sincerity. The limousine, the gown, the plan. They weren't charity, they were justice. Now standing in the foyer, Grace felt the weight of every choice. Her twins, in their tiny tuxedos and dresses, looked up at her, their eyes wide with wonder at the sparkling lights. They don't know what this means, she thought, her chest tightening. They don't know he's their father. The thought was a knife, twisting deeper as she imagined his smirk inside that ballroom, waiting to crush her. She glanced at Marcus, his hand steady on her elbow, his jaw set. "Tonight, you are the storm," he'd whispered in the limousine. But could she be? Her knees trembled beneath the gown. What if I falter? What if they see the cracks? A waiter passed, his tray wobbling slightly, his eyes darting to her before he hurried away. A guest in a sequined gown whispered to her companion, their glances sharp and curious. Grace's skin prickled. "They're waiting for me to fall apart." She tightened her grip on her twin's hands, her resolve hardening. She hadn't come to beg. She'd come to stand. The ballroom doors loomed ahead, their golden handles gleaming like a challenge. Beyond them, she heard the swell of violins, the clink of glasses, his voice, confident, cruel, expecting her defeat. What's waiting on the other side? Her heart raced, but she lifted her chin, the sapphire pendant at her throat catching the light. She wasn't the broken woman he discarded. She was Grace Johnson, mother, survivor, storm. Let him try to break me again, she thought, her lips curving into a quiet defiance. He'll see what I've become. Grace Johnson's heels clicked against the marble foyer, each step a defiance against the man waiting beyond the ballroom doors. Her twins clung to her hands, their tiny shoes scuffing softly, their eyes wide with the wonder of a world they didn't yet understand. The sapphire gown felt heavy, like it could pull her back to the woman she used to be. Broken, invisible. Can I really do this? The question gnawed at her, sharp as the memory of that gold-trimmed invitation. Come see me with someone who deserves me. His words burned in her mind, a taunt that had kept her awake for days, staring at the cracked ceiling of her Compton apartment. 6 years ago, she'd believed in love. She'd grown up in a neighborhood where hope was a luxury, raised by a grandmother who worked double shifts to keep the lights on. Grace had learned early to find joy in small things, shared laughter over macaroni dinners, hand-me-down dresses sewn with care. At 22, she met him, a rising entrepreneur with a charming smile and promises of a better life. He saw me, she thought, her heart swelling when he called her his queen. She ignored her grandmother's warnings, the way her eyes narrowed at his flashy car. Men like that don't stay, baby. But Grace had dreamed of a family, a home, stability. She gave him everything, her heart, her trust, her future. The early days were sweet. He'd bring her daisies, cheap but thoughtful, and whisper plans for a house with a yard. She quit her nursing assistant job to support his hustle, cooking dinners, ironing his shirts, believing love meant sacrifice. But as his business grew, his warmth faded. His eyes lingered on women in designer heels. His voice sharpened when she spoke. When she told him about the twins, her hands trembling with joy, his face darkened. Twins? You think I can afford that? His words were a slap. She'd cried alone that night, her belly already swelling, promising her unborn babies she'd be enough for them. Then came the betrayal. He stopped coming home. His calls grew cold, his excuses flimsier. One night, he packed her suitcase, his eyes empty. You're holding me back, he said, shoving her out the door. Pregnant, penniless. She slept on a friend's couch, her hands cradling her belly. How do I survive this? The question haunted her as she worked odd jobs, cleaning houses, folding laundry, anything to buy diapers. Strangers stared at her swollen figure, some with pity, others with judgment. Poor black girl, no ring, no man. The whispers followed her, each one a weight on her shoulders. She'd bite her lip, swallow the shame, and keep moving. For them, always for them. When the twins were born, a boy and a girl, her world shifted. Their tiny cries were her lifeline, their soft hands her reason to rise. She worked night shifts at the hospital, her fingers numb from typing reports, her back aching from standing. She'd skip meals to afford their shoes, hum lullabies to hide her tears. I won't let you feel unwanted, she'd whisper, rocking them in a second-hand crib. The world saw a struggling single mom, but she saw herself as their shield, their everything. The invitation had arrived like a ghost from that past. She'd found it on her kitchen table, the gold trim gleaming under the dim bulb. Her hands shook as she read it, his handwriting as cold as his heart. Why now? She'd paced, the twins' laughter echoing from their room, a stark contrast to the pain twisting inside her. She wanted to burn it, to forget him. But his words, "someone who deserves me," lit a fire. He thinks I'm still that broken girl. The thought stung, but it also sparked something new. Defiance. She wasn't that girl anymore. She'd survived him, survived the world's judgment. Could I face him? The idea terrified her, made her stomach churn. She imagined walking into that ballroom, his smirk waiting, the crowd's eyes judging her faded shoes, her tired face. She sat on her worn couch, the invitation crumpled in her fist. The twins slept, their soft breaths steady in the quiet. What if I go? What if I don't? Her mind raced, replaying his cruelty, the way he'd laughed as she begged him to stay. She saw the guests' faces, their whispers, and his new bride's smug smile. Her chest tightened, fear and fury colliding. He wants me to break. But then she thought of her twins, their trusting eyes, their futures she'd fought for. She couldn't hide forever. Maybe it's time to show him who I am now. A faint knock at her door startled her. She hesitated, smoothing her scrubs. Who comes at this hour? Her heart thudded as she crossed the room, the invitation still clutched in her hand. Beyond that door, something was waiting. Maybe a chance. Maybe a trap. But as she reached for the knob, a quiet resolve settled in her bones. Whatever it is, I'm not running anymore. The knock on her apartment door still echoed in Grace Johnson's mind, sharp and unexpected, like a stone breaking the surface of still water. She stood frozen, the crumpled invitation clutched in her hand, its gold edges biting into her palm. Who's here at this hour? Her heart thudded as she crossed the worn linoleum, the twins' soft snores drifting from their bedroom. The dim bulb flickered, casting jagged shadows on the peeling wallpaper. She smoothed her scrubs, her fingers trembling. Is this a trick? Her mind raced back to the ballroom she'd just vowed to face, to his cruel words. Come see me with someone who deserves me. She'd decided to fight, but now doubt clawed at her. What if I'm walking into his trap? She opened the door and there he was. Marcus Hale, the tech billionaire, whose name was whispered in hospital halls. Tall, broad-shouldered, his dark suit out of place in her cramped hallway, he stood with a quiet intensity. His eyes, shadowed by loss, met hers with a steadiness that made her breath catch. Why is he here? She'd seen him before, lingering by the children's ward, his donations funding new equipment. But this was different. His presence felt personal, deliberate. I hope I'm not intruding, he said, his voice low, calm, like he was used to commanding rooms without raising it. She gripped the doorframe, her knuckles tightening. What does he want from me? I know what he did to you, Marcus said, his gaze flickering to the invitation in her hand. He stepped closer, his polished shoes creaking against the floor. I've seen it before. Men like him, breaking people for sport. His jaw clenched, a flash of pain crossing his face. Grace's stomach twisted. He's talking about him. She wanted to slam the door, to hide from the memories his words stirred. Nights on a friend's couch, her belly heavy with twins, his laughter as he threw her out. But Marcus's eyes held no pity, only a shared wound. My wife, he said, his voice catching, she fought cancer alone after her family turned their backs. I couldn't save her, but I can help you. Help me, Grace's mind reeled. She'd learned to trust no one, to rely on her own cracked hands and weary heart. She studied his face, searching for a lie, a twitch, a too quick smile. But his hands, clasped tightly, betrayed a tremor, like he was fighting his own ghosts. I don't need charity, she said, her voice sharp, defensive. The words felt hollow. She was tired, so tired of carrying everything alone. Marcus shook his head. This isn't charity, it's justice. He pulled a slim folder from his jacket, his fingers deliberate. He's not untouchable. I have proof, emails, financial records, things he thought he buried. Grace's breath hitched. Proof? Her mind flashed to the hospital, to whispered rumors about his shady deals, the way he'd flaunted his wealth while she scraped by. She'd overheard nurses gossiping. seen his name in headlines about creative accounting. Could it be true? Marcus opened the folder, revealing printed emails, his name in bold, words cold and mocking. She's nothing without me. Her throat tightened. He wrote that about me. The room spun, her fingers brushing the paper, its edges sharp like the invitation. Marcus's voice cut through her haze. He invited you to humiliate you. Let's turn it around. Walk into that wedding not as his victim, but as his reckoning. She stared at him, her heart pounding. Why me? Why now? The twins stirred in their room, a soft whimper breaking the silence. She thought of their faces, their trust in her, the way they'd never know their father's cruelty if she could shield them. But shielding meant hiding, and she was done hiding. Can I trust him? Marcus's eyes held steady, but his left hand fidgeted with a cufflink, a nervous tick that made him human, not just a billionaire savior. I've got a team ready, he said. Investigators, a lawyer, even a stylist. You'll walk in there like a queen, and when the time's right, the truth comes out. Grace's knees felt weak. She saw herself in that ballroom, his smirk waiting, the crowd's eyes judging. What if I can't do this? But then she saw her twins, their futures, the life she'd fought for. Marcus's words echoed. Justice. Not just for her, but for them. She nodded, her voice barely a whisper. Okay. He gave a small smile, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. Good. Tomorrow a car will come for you. This isn't his night anymore. It's yours. As he turned to leave, Grace clutched the folder, its weight grounding her. The door clicked shut, and she sank onto the couch, her mind racing. What have I just agreed to? The invitation lay beside her, its gold trim mocking her still. But now it wasn't just a taunt. It was a battlefield. She wasn't sure if she was ready, but she knew one thing. He won't see me break. Grace Johnson's heart thundered as the golden ballroom doors loomed before her, their polished sheen reflecting her sapphire gown like a beacon. Her twins' small hands squeezed hers, their tiny faces lit with awe at the chandelier's glow. I said I'd ruin him, she thought. Her own words. I came to see your triumph, but I'll leave you in ruins. Echoing from the foyer where she'd stood moments ago. Can I really do this? Her pulse raced, the weight of Marcus Hale's folder burning in her mind. Those emails, his cruel words, the proof of his crimes. She clutched the memory of them like a lifeline. She glanced at Marcus, his steady presence a quiet anchor beside her. He believes in me, but doubt gnawed at her. What if I freeze? What if they see the scared girl from Compton? The doors swung open, and a hush swept through the Beverly Hills Hotel ballroom. Hundreds of eyes turned, champagne glasses pausing midair, the string quartet faltering on a note. Grace stepped forward, her heels clicking on the marble floor, each step a defiance against the man who'd cast her out. The sapphire gown shimmered, hugging her curves, the pendant at her throat catching the light. She felt every gaze, some curious, some cruel, like needles on her skin. They're waiting for me to crumble. Her twins, dressed in a tiny tuxedo and a sparkling dress, toddled beside her, their resemblance to their father unmistakable. Whispers hissed through the crowd. That's her? His ex? Those kids, they're his. Grace's stomach twisted. They see it too. At the head of the hall, her ex-husband stood, his tuxedo crisp, his arm around his bride, a Latina model whose diamond earrings gleamed with every flash of the cameras. His smirk faltered as he saw her, his eyes narrowing, a flicker of unease crossing his face. He didn't expect this. Grace's chest tightened, memories of his cruelty flooding back, his cold voice. You're holding me back, as he'd pushed her out of their home. She wanted to shrink, to run, but Marcus's hand brushed her elbow, his touch steady. You are the storm, he'd said. She lifted her chin, her eyes locking on her ex-husband's. I'm not your victim anymore. He stepped forward, his champagne glass raised, his voice dripping with venom cloaked in charm. Well, look who showed up, he said, loud enough for the room to hear. My ex scraping by on pity. Did you borrow that dress, or is your new friend buying your way in? The crowd tittered, some guests shifting uncomfortably, others leaning in, hungry for drama. Grace's throat burned. He's doing it, making me small. Her fingers tightened around her twins, their warmth grounding her. She saw his left hand, the one that used to sign checks he'd never share, twitch nervously around his glass. He's not as sure as he sounds. Her voice trembled at first, but she forced it steady, each word a brick in her rebuilt spine. Without you, I found myself, she said, her gaze unwavering. And that was everything you feared. The room gasped, the air thick with shock. Her ex's smile froze, his knuckles whitening on the glass. His bride's eyes darted to him, her painted nails digging into his arm, a silent question in her stare. She's not sure either. Grace's heart pounded, but she stood taller, the sapphire pendant glinting like a shield. They expected me to be broken. They got me whole. The crowd murmured, some guests whispering behind their hands, others nodding, their faces softening. A waiter dropped a spoon, the clatter jarring in the tense silence. Grace felt Marcus's presence beside her, his silence louder than words. He's waiting for the right moment. She thought of the folder, the proof inside it, emails where her ex mocked her, financial records that could bury him. What happens when they know? Her twins tugged at her hands, their innocent eyes scanning the crowd. They don't know this is about their father. The thought stabbed her, but it also fueled her. She wasn't here just for herself. She was here for them. Her ex laughed, a brittle sound that didn't reach his eyes. You always were dramatic, he said, circling closer, his posture predatory. What's next? Begging for a handout in front of my guests? The words cut, but Grace caught the way his bride's smile tightened, the way her eyes flicked to the crowd, seeking approval. She's nervous. Grace's resolve hardened. This is my moment, not his. She opened her mouth to respond, but Marcus's hand grazed her back, a subtle signal. Not yet. The room buzzed, the tension coiling tighter. What's he waiting for? Grace's eyes scanned the crowd, catching a man in a dark suit near the back, his badge glinting faintly under the lights. Her breath caught. Is that the investigator? The question hung in her mind, a spark ready to ignite the storm. Grace Johnson stood tall in the Beverly Hills Hotel ballroom, her sapphire gown catching the chandelier light. Her twins' hands warm in hers. Her words, "Without you, I found myself, and that was everything you feared," still hung in the air, a challenge that had silenced the crowd. Her heart pounded, her ex-husband's brittle laugh echoing in her ears. He thinks he can still win. She felt the weight of every eye, the guests' whispers like static, their curiosity sharp as knives. Do they believe me? Her twins shifted closer, their small bodies anchoring her. She caught a guest's glance, a woman in pearls clutching her clutch too tightly, her eyes darting away. They're waiting for more. Marcus Hale's presence beside her was steady, but his silence felt heavy, charged. What's he holding back? Her ex-husband stepped closer, his champagne glass glinting, his smirk a mask slipping at the edges. You're pathetic, he spat, his voice loud, performative. Parading these kids for sympathy? You'll never be more than a sob story. The words stung, slicing open old wounds, nights spent crying, her twins asleep, his voice in her head, calling her nothing. Grace's fingers trembled, but she held his gaze. He's scared. She noticed his right hand, the one that once slammed doors in her face, fidgeting with his cufflink. A nervous tick. His bride, radiant in her designer gown, gripped his arm, her smile faltering as she scanned the crowd. She senses it too. Marcus stepped forward, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Enough, Mr. Whitford, he said, calm but lethal, pulling a sleek tablet from his jacket. The room stilled, the quartet's bows frozen midair. You invited her to humiliate her. Instead, you've invited your own reckoning. Grace's breath caught. This is it. Marcus tapped the screen, and a recording crackled to life, her ex's voice cold, unmistakable. She's nothing, just a burden. Let her raise those brats alone. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Grace's chest tightened, tears pricking her eyes. He said that about us. The twins clung to her, sensing the shift, their wide eyes searching her face. They don't understand, but they feel it. Marcus swiped the tablet, revealing emails. His name in bold, detailing shady deals, offshore accounts, stolen funds. These prove you've been embezzling for years, Marcus said, his gaze locked on her ex. Your empire's built on lies, and tonight it falls. The crowd erupted, guests pulling out phones, whispers turning to accusations. Her ex's face drained of color, his glass slipping, splashing champagne on his polished shoes. Lies, he shouted, his voice cracking. This is a setup. But his bride stepped back, her diamonds glinting as she shook her head. Tell me there's nothing illegal, she hissed, her voice low but sharp. I staked everything on you. Her eyes, wide with panic, betrayed her. She was unraveling. A man in a dark suit rose from the back, his badge catching the light. Mr. Whitford, he said, voice authoritative, we're acting on a court-issued warrant. You know your rights. The room exploded in chaos. Cameras flashed, guests gasped, some scrambling for the exits. Grace's heart raced. It's happening. Two officers moved in, their handcuffs clinking. Her ex staggered, his face twisting in desperation. This is a mistake, he roared, but the officers seized his arms, the cuffs snapping shut. His bride's face hardened, her fingers fumbling with her ring. I asked for the truth, she said, her voice ice cold. You gave me a headline. She dropped the ring, its clatter echoing on the marble, and stormed toward the doors, her gown trailing like a fading dream. Grace stood frozen, her twins pressing against her. He's going down. She saw the crowd's eyes shift, no longer pitying her, but judging him. A woman nearby clutched her husband's arm, whispering, he abandoned his own kids. Grace's throat burned. They see him now. She thought of the nights she'd cried, the hospital shifts that broke her body, the twins' faces keeping her going. Was this worth it? Marcus's hand rested on her shoulder, his touch steady. You did this, he whispered. She nodded, tears welling, but her chin high. I'm not invisible anymore. As the officers dragged her ex away, his shouts fading, a new sound rose. Applause, tentative at first, then swelling. Grace's heart pounded, the weight of years lifting. What happens now? Her twins looked up, their eyes questioning. She knelt, pulling them close, her voice soft but firm. We're okay now. But as the crowd's cheers grew, a single question lingered, sharp and urgent. What will they ask when they learn he's their father? Grace Johnson stood on the stage of a charity gala, the warm glow of spotlights softening the edges of her sapphire gown, now a symbol of her triumph. Her twins played nearby, their laughter mingling with the clink of wine glasses, a stark contrast to the chaos of that night at the Beverly Hills Hotel. I made it through, she thought, her heart steady but heavy with the weight of what she'd overcome. The crowd's applause from that night still echoed in her mind, a balm to years of silent struggles. Do they see me as I am now? Her fingers brushed the sapphire pendant at her throat, its cool surface grounding her. I'm not just a survivor, she scanned the room, catching a guest's quick smile, another's nod of respect. But what does this moment mean for us? The gala buzzed with energy, donors in tailored suits and elegant dresses mingling under crystal chandeliers. Grace's chest tightened, not with fear, but with purpose. She thought of the hospital shifts that had left her hands cracked, the nights she'd gone hungry to feed her twins, the sting of whispers calling her a failure. I was never nothing, she realized, her eyes tracing the banner behind her. Johnson Foundation. She and Marcus Hale had built it to support single mothers, offering them shelter, jobs, hope, the things she'd clawed for alone. This is bigger than me. Her twins ran to her, their tiny hands clutching her dress, their eyes bright with pride. They're why I fought. Marcus stepped to her side, his presence calm but electric. You ready? He asked, his voice soft, his fingers adjusting his tie, a nervous habit she'd come to recognize. She nodded, her throat tight. Can I do this justice? She stepped to the podium, the crowd quieting, their faces expectant. A woman in a silk shawl dabbed her eyes, her gaze fixed on Grace. They're listening. Grace's voice trembled at first, then grew strong. We didn't win by shouting louder, she said, her words clear, deliberate. We won by standing, by rising every time life tried to break us. The room erupted in applause, hands clapping, some guests standing, their cheers a wave of validation. She paused, her twins' giggles pulling her gaze. They'll ask about him one day. The thought stung, but she pushed it aside. She'd faced the man who'd abandoned them, watched him cuffed and exposed, his empire crumbling under the weight of his lies. He can't hurt us anymore. But the memory of her son's question, why did Daddy leave us? Lingered, a wound not yet healed. She looked at Marcus, his eyes steady, carrying the same quiet pain she'd seen when he spoke of his late wife. He's not just here for tonight. She thought of his promise to her twins, his gentle vow to stay. Can I let myself believe in this? A donor approached, his handshake firm. You've given us all courage, Ms. Johnson, he said, his wife nodding beside him, her earrings catching the light. Others followed, their words warm. You're a hero. This foundation will change lives. Grace's heart swelled, but doubt flickered. Am I enough to carry this? She saw her reflection in a nearby glass panel, no longer the exhausted nurse, but a woman reborn. The pendant gleamed, now pinned to the foundation's nameplate, a beacon of resilience. This is my legacy. Marcus leaned close, his breath warm against her ear. You've turned pain into purpose, he said, his hand brushing hers, a fleeting touch that felt like a promise. Grace's eyes stung, not with sorrow but with gratitude. I'm not alone anymore. She thought of her grandmother, her sacrifices, her love that had carried Grace through the darkest nights. I'm carrying her forward too. The crowd raised their glasses, a toast rippling through the room. To Grace, to strength. Her twins clapped, their joy infectious, and Grace let herself smile, truly smile, for the first time in years. As the gala's music swelled, Grace stepped off the stage, her twins running into her arms. What's next for us? The question wasn't fear anymore. It was possibility. She held them close, Marcus at her side, his hand steady on her shoulder. The future stretched before her, not a shadow of her past, but a canvas of light. I've built something that lasts. And as the crowd's cheers faded into a warm hum, one truth settled in her bones. I am enough. And so Grace Johnson's journey reminds us that strength isn't born from wealth or status. It's forged in the fires of hardship, in the quiet moments when we choose to stand tall. From a discarded single mom to a beacon of hope, she turned betrayal into a legacy of love and resilience, proving that no storm can break a heart that fights for others. What's the toughest storm you've faced, and how did it shape who you are today? Share your story in the comments. We're all stronger when we lift each other. Next time, get ready for another tale of courage, where an underdog flips the script on a world that counted them out. Thank you for being here, for feeling this story with us. Your support means everything. Hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you in the next video, because every story deserves a voice.